So this is going to be a spoiler-free review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now, the previous films in the reboot series, the reboot trilogy, were fantastic. That's Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes. In the modern era of films, they've got to be some of the best big-budget blockbuster films, and how there was equal amount of attention given to the story and characters as there was the special effects. The final film in that trilogy, War for the Planet of the Apes, came out in 2017, and I gotta say that once Disney acquired Fox, I didn't really expect them to do anything with the Ape films, but turns out they still saw more to do with these films, and now we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. In this film, many generations since Caesar's death, the Earth is now dominated by apes, while almost all of humanity is reduced to brainless animal-like state. We follow an ape named Noah and his clan of apes that suffer an attack from a rival clan, which leads to Noah surprisingly enlisting some human help to set things right. Like the other films in the previous trilogy, the initial wow factor here is the sensational visual effects work on the apes. These movies are just the best marriage of motion capture plus CGI combined, and there's not one moment where anything looks subpar. It's actually pretty damn criminal that none of these films in this series have won the Academy Award for visual effects. Just as nice here though were the background settings. When you get to the city environments here, and it looks like a world where apes have now taken over, and how the trees, vegetation, and the grass have just completely overrun the buildings and the streets. It very much looks like a lot of the settings in the Last of Us games. What's also cool here is how the evolution of the actual Planet of the Apes here. Given when this movie takes place, ape society has become much more sophisticated than what we saw in the previous films. Now, the films in the previous trilogy, I'll call it the Caesar trilogy, were dominated well by Caesar, portrayed in brilliant fashion by Andy Serkis. He'll go down as one of the best characters in cinema history. The writing and development were that good for him. He's not in this film, as, spoiler, he died at the end of War for the Planet of the Apes. This movie takes place an unspecified amount of time after war. All they say is that it's generations later, so I'm assuming it's at least 40 or 50 years afterwards. We don't know the exact amount of time. But because of that, we don't follow any of the characters from the previous trilogy. Here we follow a young adult ape named Noah. He's basically the same age Caesar was in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now, Noah is actually the least interesting thing in this whole movie. The only thing he's really got going on is that he's got daddy issues in terms of trying to live up to his dad's legacy, who was a master in taming and controlling falcons. He's no Caesar is what I'm trying to say here, though his best moments were when he was challenging and questioning the previous power dynamic between humans and apes. But there were far better characters in this film though, one of which was an orangutan named Raka. He had just such a cool voice. He had most of the humor that was in the film, and he was really interesting because he was basically the only ape in this film not to have an adversarial relationship with humans. My favorite character here was definitely King Proximus, who I guess qualifies as the main antagonist here. He's looking to further evolve ape society by having apes acquire human weapons and artillery. Every scene he was in was just so goddamn good. He just had some amazing dialogue, great presence, and all the scenes he was in, you just weren't sure when he was actually going to go ape shit. The human dynamic here is where things get very interesting in this world. At the time when this movie takes place, things have evolved to where most of humans are reduced to that inferior, animal-like intellect seen in the first Planet of the Apes. But this movie showcases that humanity still has some hope, as there is some humans that are still intellectually intact and is fighting to keep hope alive for the human race. We see this through a character named May, and we see that through her eyes it f***ing sucks to be a human during this time. You're either a wild animal getting caged up by apes, or just struggling to stay alive. It's a very natural feeling movie in terms of how the story progresses. Unlike War for the Planet of the Apes, which was definitely the weakest of the previous trilogy, the story and setting here definitely aren't as static. It moves from setting to setting in nice fashion. The movie is a little long though. I don't know if I was just tired at the time I watched it, but there was a period before things really started cooking before the third act, where I was nodding off more than a few times. It did get pretty slow. The final bit of the movie, though, is really good. Once Proximus takes center stage and his goals and aspirations really raise the stakes in terms of the future of this world. Ultimately, this movie fits right in line with the quality standard from the Caesar trilogy. It's a great marriage of beautiful visual effects and quality storytelling, leading to the best kind of blockbuster out there, one with a brain. So 8.5 out of 10 wonderful days for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
What a wonderful day!
The main thing holding the movie back for me is, like I said, I found it to be a little too long and Noah not to be the most interesting protagonist. What's great though is that there's still room for things to evolve in this world, as in this movie things haven't quite reached the level of where the apes were in the original Planet of the Apes. And for those wondering, even though Disney is producing this film now through 20th Century Studios, they didn't really family-friendly it up. They didn't have any kind of negative influence in that way. Although having some of the apes bust in the song and sing "I Want to Be Like You" from the Jungle Book would have been kind of funny, I guess. My auditorium was all the way packed. I saw the movie in IMAX on a Saturday night, although I guess that probably wasn't the best indicator of how this film would do on opening weekend, Friday through Sunday, because the final result is 56 million domestically in the US. I think that's kind of an result. I think anything that was 70 or above, and I think Disney would have considered that a big time win and be satisfied. I think 56 million is definitely on the lower end. They're going to have to hope that this movie has solid holds throughout the weeks in theaters and maybe can reach like 170-ish million domestically. Although it did have a solid result worldwide. It did about 120 million worldwide, and with a budget of 160 million, that's definitely not a bad start. So we'll just have to see how the movie does going forward. So that'll do it for this review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the first movie I saw during the summer blockbuster season for 2024. You made it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching.